Welcome. Hello and good afternoon to everyone. Thank you for so many of you taking the time out of your day for our live CACA webinar. We are excited. My name is Jonetta Davis Joyce, and I am one of CACA's vice presidents. We are excited that so many of you have joined us. Please be aware that we have some dynamic webinars coming up from CACA and the National Coalition Institute that you do not want to miss. But today's webinar and future National Coalition Institute webinars will aid coalitions in making a difference in your community. I just have a few housekeeping tasks before I introduce our wonderful speaker today. First, I ask that everyone remain muted unless you raise your hand for questions during the Q&A times. We will have 2 Q&A sessions today, so please prepare and write down your questions. Second, the webinar is being recorded as a training educational tool for the prevention field. Remember, we will have time for Q&A at the end as well. I will now introduce our speaker for this afternoon. Ms. Beverly Watts-Davis has been in the field for over 3 decades. She is currently the Chief Officer for Program Support and Senior Vice President for Texas WestCare Foundation and has served on CACA's Board of Directors. She is a member of the Senior Executive Service with the government and has served as Senior Advisor to the SAMHSA Administrator, as well as the Director of the Center for Substance Abuse Prevention. She enjoys working with coalitions to help ensure success and longevity. When one funding cycle ends, a new possibility begins. She has led many initiatives, including the Strategic Prevention Framework, SPIF-SIG, Drug-Free Communities, Prevention Fellows, CACA Prevention Day, Faith in Action Grants, Minority AIDS Initiative, Tribal Consultant Policy Affairs, and many, many more. Over her career, she has been responsible for an estimate of over $600 million in funding. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Beverly Watts-Davis. Thank you.
Well, it is my absolute pleasure and honor to be here with you all today. Totally. You are my people, and it's just wonderful to see you all. I happen to see so many of the wonderful people at CACA, but all of you all out there. And so you all literally, I know for all of us, as we are doing this work, one of the things that we constantly are thinking about is both funding and how do we keep this great work going? Because when your coalition works, it works and it begins, it's like dominoes falling and different things start to happen in your community. And so many people come to you and go, and what about this? And can you help with this? And you end up being a source, both for programming, but for also problem solving, which is what you all are. You are problem solving coalitions. And the fact that we've taken on the issue of substance use prevention by youth as truly as part of where we started this journey, it has turned into so much more because we recognize that we are now of the thought that we don't want to just help people get better. We really want to help people get well. And when we help people get well, we help communities get well. And then we help our cities and our states and our country be well. And each one of you all are true heroes and sheroes in what you do. And again, we're going to get past this slide with me because we're going to move on to straight into the first slide. And I want to just begin to really talk about, next slide, please. I really want to talk about this because I want you all to recognize there is for those who've been in the field, this is an old story, but we got a lot of newbies who have come on board and we welcome you home and to this field. But there's a story of people who were walking through the forest and there was a river that was running alongside their path. And they heard some sounds or motions, and they looked over and they saw that somebody was in the water and they were drowning and, trying to gasp for air. Well, they jumped into the river to try to be able to save the person. And they recognized there were more people just flowing down the river. They're all grasping for air, calling for help. And more of the coalition members are just jumping into the water to try to save people. So as they, as they were doing this, they were running out of volunteers. People were getting tired, and they were going like, people were still coming down this river. And so they're like, what is going on here? And someone said, let me go upstream. Let me go up the river and find out what has happened. So this person runs up the river, and what they see is that the bridge has fallen. The bridge has fallen apart. And that's why people are falling into the river. And so they said, let's figure out what we got to do to fix this bridge to keep people from falling in the river. And they did that. And again, that was able to help, make sure that downstream people could catch up and begin to get people to shore and to people to safety. You all, that is just an analogy to why prevention is so very important. We are the bridge. We're the bridge in communities that really is the stopgap to things getting worse. We're the bridge in the community that helps people get from one part of their life to another. We're the bridge in community that actually connects communities with their local elected officials to get things done and to make sure the local officials are very aware of what needs to be done. We are the bridge in our field that continues to emphasize that prevention is the most cost-effective thing that we can possibly do for people. It's the most cost-effective thing we can possibly do for our young people, and that there is no way that we can arrest or treat our way out of addressing the issue of substance use. But we can certainly prevent it from getting worse, and we can certainly help make it get better. Next slide. Every single one of you, this slide has been something that I've used over the years, but this really, for the longest time, really speaks to the work in this field. We are constantly trying to get up and over and onto the top of this issue, and being able to make sure that we can possibly get things better, make things stop, make sure we got funding in the right places, et cetera. And we are one of the few fields that actually work to make sure that everybody in this field is being able to get support, because we're the connective tissue amongst all of it. Whether it's people who are doing treatment, whether it is people who have recovered, they're in recovery from treatment. We are the back end of that really focuses in on relapse prevention and being able to do that through recovery support services. We're on the front end of that can intervene with young people who have parents who are actively using, and yet their environment is so very against them being able to actually refute using alcohol and other drugs, especially at their home where you expect to be very safe. So again, we have been the connective tissue in this field for years. And I just remind myself of whence we come, but what the struggles that all of you all have to go through, which is why I'm such an advocate for what you do, because you all have continued to be, as I said, the heroes and sheroes who have kept up this good fight, who have begun to move us forward and to move this country forward as we address issues. Next slide, please. So today, what we're going to be talking about is something that I know that is near and dear to many of your hearts. We're going to really talk about sustainability. And I want to, during this presentation, I want to talk about foundational things that can be done, because this is really about making your organization strong, not just making your initiative strong and the things that you're doing strong, but making your organization strong. It's serving as the framework from which you're doing all this work, and how we're going to be able to do that. So there's some foundational suggestions and recommendations that I want to share with you. There's certainly the whole idea of broadening the prevention definition. Many of you all have a Drug-Free Communities grant, and for many of you all, that's how you actually got into this field. I want to be able to say to you that what I'm talking about today is the umbrella. It is the umbrella that really would umbrella your DFC coalition, because you all are going to grow. It's important for you to be prepared for that growth. And so as you are moving forward, as I said, you're going to become a source for your community. And in doing so, you are going to need to take a look at broadening that definition of prevention. For years in our field, we said that the only thing that we did is to work on preventing youth drug use. Well, what we realized very, very quickly is that the largest contributor to crime in all communities was substance use and drug use. The largest factor, the largest risk factor. When we began to look at risk factor, to look at our communities in terms of risk factor, it was always fluctuating between number 1 and number 2 in terms of risk factors in our communities. All the things associated with people abusing alcohol and other drugs were hugely the protective factors that we needed to focus in, whether it was parents, whether it was peer groups who were influencing the decisions of our children. And so in broadening this definition of prevention, it's bringing so many other of your colleagues under the tent of prevention so that you all can work together to weave that continuum of prevention in your community that is truly going to make sure your community is healthy, safe, and thriving. Because until that happens, we will be doing, as I said, we cannot treat or incarcerate our way out of this. But if we do not look at the broader picture of how we impact not only youth, but the families in which they live and the community in which they live, we will be doing this. We will literally be like a hamster on a treadmill, just running. And so by broadening that definition, we're going to really take a look at your vision and mission. And then we're going to really, the thing that I know all of y'all want to be able to really talk about is identifying those funding sources to meet all those community needs. And you're going to see how the overlay of prevention helps all of these things, all of the dots connect. Because of being in a prevention framework, all of these dots connect to achieve the initial goal of a healthy and safe community. Next slide. So some of the foundational suggestions that I want to just be able to talk about, and this is really going to contribute to the sustainability of your organization. And I'm starting with the end in mind. As we have been in this field, this is a field that it's the hardest work you'll ever love. And our average, I'm so glad to see the fresh new blood coming into the field, all of you young people coming in, all of you other younger people coming in. But one of the things that prevention leaders must plan for is succession planning. We have had many coalitions who have had their 10 years of funding. And because this did not happen, they're no longer here. So we have to be able to plan for the succession of leadership. Because again, I am telling you all, as you go along this journey, you're going to become a source in your community. You will be looked to not just solve problems around this issue, but people are going to be recognizing that the coalition framework, which is now being referred to as community as a solution, but the coalition framework is absolutely necessary for community problem solving. And so as you are doing this, you will find that more and more people will come to you, more and more people will invite you to be a part of what they're doing, more and more people will invite you to be a part of their grants. And what you have to be able to make sure of is that if you have one person at the top, what happens when that person leaves? Or what happens if something happens to that person? You've always got to be able to make sure you've got a number 2, 3, and 4 of people who can step up in different ways with what you were doing. And that succession planning, you all, that sounds so final, but I'm putting that on the table because that's the words that people understand. Even if we don't use the word succession, what we're really talking about is making sure that you have ongoing leadership, continuous leadership, such that if anything happens with anyone, someone can pick up and keep right on moving. You don't miss a beat. You just keep right on going. And as you are looking at how to really sustain your organization, one of the things that has to happen, and this really is, I think, a must for those working with coalitions, is you're going to find that the hierarchical leadership of this is the boss, these are the people who report to the boss, everybody reports to those people report to the boss. The very up and down hierarchical leadership that has dominated our country and our systems for forever, that is changing. And one of the things, and thanks to truly the work of coalitions, it is changing in a way that is making things so much better. I want to just take a moment now to just say thanks, truly, to CADCA for being such a foundational piece of this whole coalition movement. I want to thank all the former CSAP directors who have been there. That's Janetta Davis, Fran Harding, our newest CSAP director, Captain Jones, who are all stepping into these shoes. But I also truly want to make sure that I thank a person who has shepherded this for stability. When I talked about succession planning, this person is the best emulation of this that I can think of, and that is Miss Helen Hernandez. Helen Hernandez was, I don't know if we were her first job, but she worked at SAMHSA. She was one of our interns, and she worked under another wonderful one by the name of Claudia Richards. And Claudia, and I remember walking down one day and meeting Helen, seeing this wonderful young lady. And now Helen is at ONDC, at the Office of National Drug Control Policy, and she has made sure that this program has the time, attention that it needs to be able to grow to the state that it is. And I'm saying the same thing to you all. At watching her come up, there was other leaders before her, John Walters, Marianne Soberg. I can, oh my gosh, I can, Andre, I've forgotten what, Andre Black, all of these people who preceded her, who had things to do with this field and these things called coalitions and these drug-free community people. And we could have been shipped off as we originally were, because originally this program started in the Justice Department. And then it shifted over to SAMHSA when I came over as CSAP director. But what I'm simply saying, and it has moved again, without having that stable person for the care and feeding of this coalition, God knows where we would be, and we'd be watered down versions of something and spread all over the place. But because we've had that, so Helen, I don't know if she's on here or not, but you guys, when you see her, all of you all make sure that you thank her for she has fought the good fight for this field, and it is so important. She's a good example of succession planning because she stayed, and as she did, things moved up, and there were people who filled in behind her. But as I was saying, one of the key things that you will also note about her is that she doesn't work in a top-down manner. She works as a facilitator and a collaborator and a partner to so many of the other federal agencies so that the work of prevention gets done. Same too of General Price, who collaborates and partners with others. Same with Sue Thaw. There isn't a person in Congress who doesn't know who Sue Thaw is. And many of those congressmen who call her and say, this is who I'm hiring, what do you think? And those are the kinds of things when I'm saying that, all of that comes from being a facilitator and being a good collaborator, not one where you're trying to take advantage of people, but where you're coming to the table and wanting to share resources to fix a common problem. And then formally partnering with people so that you two together are writing grants, or you 3 or 4 together are writing grants to comprehensively solve a problem. And that you and 4 other people are also are meeting with your city council and your county commissioners to be able to address the problem comprehensively. Because you can't do it all, but you've got partners and collaborators who are going to take a piece of the work so that you can begin to come up with a whole solution that isn't going to only help people get better. It's actually going to help people get well. So I cannot say this enough, that collaboration is absolutely necessary in this field, because what we deal with is behaviors. And to be able to actually address behaviors, you have to literally address the whole person and the things that impact that whole person. as we know, if you're going to comprehensively address substance use, you have to worry about crime. You have to worry about delinquency. You have to worry about child welfare. You have to worry about stable families. You have to worry about safe neighborhoods. You have to worry about all of that, because all of those things are those risk factors that come back to haunt us. The other good thing, and you all, we have this for the field of prevention, but some of you may be using something else, and that's fine. But programmatically, you do need to have a common framework. I know that I was intimately involved with the strategic prevention framework, and I will tell you all that that model, that framework, has actually worked for so many things. And I can honestly tell you, not only has it worked for stuff that for all kinds of safe neighborhood crime prevention initiatives we've had, it has worked for HIV initiatives. It has worked for community and economic development initiatives. And it has even worked for the initiative in which I will talk about this a little bit later, in which we were on a community, a school campus that was turned over to be a community center. Well, over the years, that community center has fallen, it falls into decay. We actually use a strategic prevention framework planning process to plan, implement, and execute a strategy to get money for that, to repair all the things in that on that building and the campus that that building sits on. And I'm proud to tell you all today that through using that framework, we actually were successful in getting $23 million allocated that's going to go to fixing that campus. And the good thing is we're going to be able to design it so that we're really looking at it being a true prevention promotion campus. So I'm saying that it's important to have a framework by which you are able to continue to connect the dots under, so that you have some commonality in both your processes and how you proceed to implement things. And having common, and I know that we have all talked about this, and sometimes people go, oh, data. It is one of the things that has really helped us in terms of our growth. We are in the large, high numbers of multi-millions in terms of what our budgets are in general. But I'm just simply saying, if you start compounding that, as we built over the years, one of the things that was very important to the work that we were doing is being able to make sure that we had common data sets across our systems, across our programs, across our services. This is what helped us to actually to assess our efficacy, to be very efficient, and to promote accountability. And because we did this, you all, our data sets, as we were putting them together, one of the things that we did, and we'll talk a little bit about this later on, is a while back, even before this was common, it is now commonplace, but we were doing what was called geomapping. And literally, it was the military and the National Guard that actually helped us do this, because as the military, they actually had spatial mapping software. Well, we're a little old nonprofit, and most nonprofits around the country didn't even have this yet. But what they were able to do, because most people will, when you listen to people talk about a problem, they go, oh, well, it's over in that part of town. That's the bad part of town. And that's how they refer to different sectors of our community. And we got really tired of hearing that, because trying to make sure that we could promote services and system things coming into place, nobody wanted to be in the bad part of town. And so what we were able to do is, working with the military, they were able to use what was called GIS mapping. It's Geographic Information Systems. And this was a new concept back then. But one of the things that they did is we worked with our police department to map out the crimes. Because if you watch the news, you would have thought that all the crime happened in our community for all of San Antonio. But when we started putting the data together, and we asked for them for every crime that occurred, we wanted to put a pinpoint, like a little pin stick on a big map as to where this was. And we got it all the way down to zip code, and all the way down to blocks, and all the way down to streets. That was such a amazing thing for us to be able to see when we stood back and we looked at this map. The whole part of our community, the whole east side was not bad. What we had were some very places within the east side that were bad. And you could see all these little pins in this one area. Come to find out, well, that's actually where the drug houses were. That's where the trap houses were. That's where they were dealing out of their cars and, doing a bunch of stuff that they shouldn't have been doing. That gave us the data that we needed to begin to move into action, mobilize our coalition and all the people that we get to begin to ask for very strategic, data-driven request, because we were making data-driven decisions based on reliable data. And we began to show this to our councilmen, our city councilmen, and our county commissioner, and our mayor, and our county judge. And really, that's actually how I became such good friends. And we said, listen, we don't want you to just you guys just been giving money to the east side to try to deal with things. Well, don't do that. Let's focus on these areas. We closed up Sonny's, what was then called Sonny's convenience store, because they were constantly selling stuff to our kids and to people they shouldn't have been selling to. But we were able to close that down. It was a 402 Ice House and Sonny's that we closed down. We were able to get those stores closed. And we were able to, the police department with the DEA was able to actually go to the places where this stuff was and shut it down. You all, and for my coalition was San Antonio Fighting Back. And I will tell you, when we started on this effort, we had the third highest crime rate in the nation. Using the drug-free communities and all the things that we did in terms of it becoming the foundational connector, the connector in the community, connect all the dots. 10 years later, we had the third lowest crime rate in the nation. And I will tell you, that was a story that helped us be able to strategically get funding when we were able to show, here's the data that we use, and show people these pictures. Here's the picture of what it looked like in this year, and this is the picture of what it looks like now. People want to fund things that are effective. And using your data in that way to tell your story absolutely helps you in terms of making sure that you're able to get funding. Being trauma informed, that is something that we have truly, that has really happened really pretty much over the last 3 years, especially with COVID impacting our communities across the nation is the way it is. People began to stop saying to people, what's wrong with you? And started saying, what's happened to you? And that frame, that changing in your mind of how you approached issues has made a huge difference. And I know it hasn't just been for us, it's been around the country, has made a huge difference, because when you start talking to people about what happened to them, you begin to get to the root causes of what made them, of what's going on in their lives. And you also don't come at them, their system, strategy in the community about as if there's something bad. But something that, if something happened to you, then there is something that we can do about that. And then also too, for your full sustainability, you all, for as much as possible, think of coalition work as, I have always thought about it as a career field. And because of that, I'm always training people as if they're going to go run their own nonprofit and be their own coalition, and training people and to be able to make sure that lots of people get this. We've always done workforce development by involving by always making sure that all of our AmeriCorps members and the people who are working with us, community members who are working with us, we're always there to get that training, and the kind of training that you want to be able to have and think about when you're really thinking about long-term sustainability. And I'm saying this to you all because this is not something that comes natural. I thought it did, but it does not come natural. And that is strategic thinking. Not everyone, and you need to tease this out within your staff and within your coalition and within your community. There are people who actually can think past, if you move up and to the right, this is going to cause 3 other things to happen later on down the line. I happen to have I've been blessed with that ability, but I can see I've got people in my staff. I've got a woman who leads all of our data efforts. Her name is Janelle, and she's a strategic thinker. She can go, if we do this, then this and this will happen. And everybody needs that, you all. And I do want to say again, not everybody has this ability, but they bring to the table other really strong abilities, but not everybody has it. But you want to make sure that you find this, because as you put things in place and you begin to think of how things work together, you need those strategic thinking. I do want to be able to say most of the time, our field has been hampered by people not necessarily dissuading people from going after other grants because they believe that it is supplanting. Now, you absolutely do not want to supplant, but I want you all to think about the phrase connecting the dots. We want to supplement what we do. You want to bring in compatible funding that absolutely adds to what you're doing. Doesn't duplicate it, but adds to that. And that's what supplanting is. That's duplicating. But supplementing, think of that in a complementary way. It just going to take a quick issue. If in fact we are working with women who have who have become addicted and they were pregnant. Okay, so we know that we are working with them now. They're in recovery, and now they're with their children. We know from all research that there are a couple of factors that end up being consistent triggers for them relapsing. One of them, in fact, the number one thing is safe and affordable housing. I'm very proud to say, knowing that is a need that we have been able to meet, that WestCare in San Antonio has been able to meet that need, and that we're opening up an apartment complex that will have allow women and their children to live there for free for 2 years while they get their lives together and begin to get back out there. But in so doing, if someone came to me and we're strategically thinking, because remember, we're thinking about how do we not help people just get better? How do we help them get well? Being well means that mother is going to be A, not drinking and drugging, B, really focused in on what she needs to be doing for herself for her to thrive and her children to thrive, and those children, because those children, while she was addicted, absolutely experienced all kinds of traumatic things that she might have not even been aware of, and when she has to think about it, will shamefully remember some of that. And so in thinking about that, when we have a partner of ours that's saying, do you all think you guys would you be interested in going with us for childcare? And the reason, it's not just any childcare, but it's specific childcare to address the needs of children whose parents have been addicted. Those children do have special things in the way that they think, the way they respond, the way that they're constantly on edge because they're waiting for the next thing. They're waiting to see. They have grown up not knowing what was going to happen to mommy, or if mommy was going to come home, or any of those things. So they're still in that pattern of behavior. And so having childcare that specifically addresses that, because those children are also at high risk for repeating that behavior. So that's going to be something that when someone comes to us and says, yeah, you've got this wonderful thing with women, is this something you all want to do? That is what we would call compatible funding. It doesn't duplicate what we're doing before. It doesn't duplicate our coalition work, but what it does do is complement what we are doing. And that's the strategic thinking that you need to be thinking about as you continue in your community. Because again, all of these issues are going to land on your table because you are the problem-solving coalition. Next slide. So we're talking about broadening that definition of prevention. Understand, prevention is a continuum. And I know this used to be a very bad phrase. It used to be, people would say, don't say that. But this has come of age. Prevention is prevention is prevention. Prevention is prevention is prevention. If you all think that the issues, first and foremost, if you think your problem-solving coalition cannot solve, give me any issue whatsoever. I dare any of y'all. If you think a coalition can't solve it, I will bet you $100 to a penny. If I'm right, you can give me a penny, and if you're right, I'll give you $100. But all of this comes back to being able to make sure that we are helping people build up those skill sets, et cetera, that help them move along that continuum. Health promotion is, and you all, this is one of the key things that I just want to be able to tell you. Our coalition has ended up being the health promotion arm for so many initiatives. And let me share with you, because our coalition is a problem-solving coalition, when COVID hit, all of us across the country had to mobilize to figure out how we got people vaccinated. Well, I just want to tell you, our city and county were out there trying to get people, particularly communities of color, vaccinated. And their efforts were failing miserably. So they came to our coalition and said, what is it that we can do? Once again, as a coalition, because we were tied into the community, we knew the kinds of health promotion efforts worked and the ones that didn't. We mobilized. I have to give credit to Dr. Diana Burns, who pulled together myself, Francine Prosser, Jolyn Burley, who was over our mental health authority, and we mobilized in an effort called COVID COP, COVID Community Outreach Project. And the result of that, because of our organizing efforts, and once again, our coalition being a problem-solving coalition, which is what all of you all are doing, we mobilized, got things together, set up things. We got on the phone with people, and I was like, Russell, I used to change your diapers. Get down there, get your whole family down there, and get vaccinated. And we had both that community mother approach, but we also had, you all are trusted, credible messengers. Do understand that is a tremendous asset for you all. Your coalition have people on it that are considered credible messengers. You are trusted. People believe what you say, and they know that you're going to follow through. The outcome of us getting involved in making sure that people got vaccinated, 8,000 people. We were able to get 8,000 people of color, vaccinated to the city's less than 1,000. So I'm simply saying, when we did that, we were able to work with the city and the county and the hospital system, and we did that in partnership with the University Health System. We were able to change things and change the way that, again, we started bringing things mobile into the community. We started going to people and being able to make sure that we could get into trusted places in the housing authorities, in our housing complex. We would take a vaccination van there and with a credible messenger. So what I'm simply saying is these are the things that if you do not think that what you're doing is health promotion, you're wrong. And you can be the arm, you can be the trusted arm of your health department, your county health system, your hospital system, in terms of doing some of the things that you all do, because you are credible messengers. And we all know, this is stuff that you all know. You all know that prevention actually decreases our risk factors and enhances the protective factors. But even more importantly, those systems of prevention, they work so much better than service silos. There's not an issue that we have to deal with in terms of human behavior that will get better, that where people will get well if we're still doing service silos. There's no way I can just address this young person's underage drinking and not do anything else, not talk about TikTok and not talk about what's on the web and not talk about the peer group and not talk about what's going on in his family and not talk about what's going on in the school system and not talk about what's going on in his community and that what he's seeing. There's no way to be able to address the underage drinking of that young person and not deal with all those other things. And that's the beauty of prevention, because you are looking at the issues in a comprehensive way. So I want to be able to just make this this quick note about evidence-based, evidence-informed, and I want to thank the the SAMHSA administrator, the assistant secretary, Miriam Delphin-Rittman, who talks about what is called practice-based evidence. And I love her for this. When you see her, thank her, because what she is saying is there's a lot of things that you all are doing out there. And she has actually said it. There's a lot of things community coalitions, these are doing out there that is absolutely showing evidence that it works. And you are doing practice-based evidence, and it is legitimate, and that we need that we can capture data from it and begin to use that to show that why coalitions work, why the Drug-Free Communities Coalition work. And so just want you all to know, I've had so many people who are in the chat. You want to know if these slides will be shared? Absolutely. I've had this conversation. You all, I have learned so much from all of you all. I would not dare present this and not give this to you. So it will be available because you deserve it. And I'm honored to be here just going through these things. We're really going to get to also some of the immediate things because there's a lot as we get through this. I know we have to have a break soon, but I want to make sure that we talk about all of the other kinds of funding sources that I want you all to think about in the bigger picture. So again, don't forget that relapse prevention is on the other side of treatment. That recovery support really is all about being able to make sure that people do not relapse. So just know that is as well a part of the prevention field. Next slide. All right. So as we talked about broadening that definition, so many of you, and I love you, especially the newbies. I just love y'all. You all had I forgot the actual coalition, but many of you all have defined your vision as exactly what your drug-free community grant was, which is to prevent illegal drug use by youth, and you've defined your mission as reducing that and over time doing whatever. And that is a wonderful, that's certainly a wonderful vision. But I want you all to recognize that as you work, your vision has to be bigger than that. Because if what you did is nothing but just focus in on preventing underage drinking by youth, you can try to change some laws and you can try to keep it out of the hands. But there's a bigger issue of what you've got to do in your communities. So as you are looking at how you bring things in to be compatible, you must have a bigger vision and a bigger mission. You've got to have a vision, get above the fray and look, you want to have healthy, safe, and one of the biggest drivers, and I'm sorry this is not on this slide, but I want you to conclude this, one of the biggest drivers of community problems that deal with behavior, domestic violence, substance use, crime, all of that, so much of that does deal with poverty. And so to this vision, we are now changing our vision to be safe, healthy, thriving, and economically viable communities. Because if everybody there, poverty is a huge driver of many of the things that contribute to substance abuse. And we want to make sure that we start addressing the social determinants of health with prevention and capacity building and a community of solutions approach. Because again, you've got to look at these things comprehensively, or we will not be able to help people get well. We may help them get better, but we're not going to help them get well. Next slide. So you guys, I just want to remind us, things have not, I want you all to know, it has been 30 years, or actually 40. That dates me. But I just want you guys to know the things that we're facing, they have not necessarily changed over the years. We still have, and this gives your coalition the legitimacy that it has. Because by using the coalition your coalition, your problem-solving coalition, which now, when you hear this, because now the major foundations are funding coalitions, but they call them communities of solution. They require all of the people that they fund to form an advisory group that's consisting of people in the community. They're now saying people with lived experience, and to address, to become a community of solutions. Dear heart, I'm honored that the major foundations have recognized what we have known for now 30 years. Coalitions are absolutely essential to making changes, positive changes in communities. And that now so I'm honored that they're calling it communities of solution. Thank you very much. But I want you all to know that you all are doing communities of solution. So when you all decide to apply to any of these other things, just make sure you know that you're already doing this. But again, I want you all to recognize in here, these are the common characteristics that we're all dealing with. We've got access barriers. We have barriers to lack of healthcare, social services, housing, transportation, employment, and all of these things are driving the one issue that they're driving the drug use in our communities. You've got long-term strains in between communities and the public sector and communities and law enforcement. And one of the grants, and I will tell you all, this was such a my hat's off to SAMHSA for doing this, because again, some of you may remember when George Floyd was murdered, that the country was in just there was a lot of anger around the country, but also there was real tension between police and communities. And in one of the grants that SAMHSA funded, it was to actually improve police and community relations. This is the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, under the brilliance of the SAMHSA administrator. Thank you again, Dr. Ritten, for doing this. But she saw the ways to be able to do this. The key mechanism that helped us get this done was our coalition, our Drug-Free Community Coalition, because we had already because of our coalition, we already had better relationships with law enforcement, and we're able to be the broker in our community between people wanting to defund the police and those who are saying, "Are y'all crazy? Who's going to protect us?" And literally keeping that out, because we actually had protests, in our community as well, and we're able to actually quiet that and get people around the table to do real problem solving that took us to a whole nother place. And again, as I've said, we recognize that we do still have in our communities marginalized populations that are experiencing high levels of poverty and inequality. And I will tell you all, I work at a community that is not only impoverished, but is actually in the scale of impoverished areas, something that fluctuates between number 2 and 4 in the nation. And we have 2 of those. And so I want to say to you all that I know how much poverty drives all of these other things, but I just want you all to know that it's not that it is not unbeatable, because we have actually changed so much of that. And we'll talk about some of that later. I know I'm trying to watch the clock and being able to do right by you all. Next slide, please. And we're gonna go through these real fast. You guys recognize all of these things are the risk factors that when we were dealing with 30 and 40 years ago, we're still dealing with them. So again, but then in my opinion, you all, this happens to be because the whole coalition movement of how to do community problem solving, thank God, it now must be, now the federal government through ONDCP has actually invested in this, but now people are realizing how much of how effective it is. And now they're really beginning to understand around community problem solving. You cannot, all of these kinds of things that are here, the scarcity of resources, alcohol and drugs, predatory practices, economic development, all of those things, having lots of vacant and abandoned buildings around, low mobility, faith communities that didn't realize the role that they can play, that they were willing to pray for us, but not necessarily engage. All of that has been, all those things have changed in our community. Next slide. We're going to quickly go through these because, again, I just want to, all of us, all of these things that we've talked about, you all, these are the things that you're dealing with with individuals and with peers. particularly with young people, we're dealing with a whole nother set of attitudes and things that continue to really push toward problem behaviors. Next slide. Same with families. You all, I have most recently spoke on this. We have had many young people who are now parents whose parents didn't parent them. So their parenting skills are wanting. Their parenting skills are not as good as they could be. And I just want you all to know that you're going to start hearing much, much greater needs for parenting training, which Coalition and DFCs were doing a long time. We're doing for a long time. I will tell you, in Laredo, Texas, my hat's off to Laredo, Texas. They have had whole school systems. The whole, we have done there in the 700 and something students that they have trained the full life skills curriculum to. And now we have 2 school districts who are having us go in to train the 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th graders for this upcoming year. Those kinds of fundamental things are going to be game changers. But along with that, we're going after being able to really deal with parents and really talking about parenting training, because you have so many people who've come up in all of the generations X, Y, and Z who didn't necessarily have parenting done to them. So it's very difficult for them to actually do this. They honestly believe that just because somebody says they want something, they have to have it. Well, life doesn't work that way. And these are just some things that we have to really just address. And when you say no, it means no. And those are the kinds of things that some of us on this phone are like, we have to teach that. Yes, we really do. And we've got to be able to get back in and do those kinds of things. Next slide. Same with school factors. I mean, I will tell you all, we still got the same issues with school. I'm so sad to say that after COVID, one of our school districts, they lost 300 kids. And I mean, really, I say lost, they don't even know where they are. We know where they are. They're out and doing stuff they shouldn't be doing. But again, my point in doing this, the next slide, is just simply saying, you all, these are ongoing issues that we must focus in on change that we can only do if we're doing this as with our coalitions being problem-solving coalitions. And this is my favorite slide of all time. And that's if we're doing this together. You guys, we just can't do this by ourselves. And I cannot emphasize enough to you all that you've got to collaborate, you've got to coordinate, you've got to communicate, you've got to collaborate, coordinate, communicate, you've got to collaborate, coordinate, communicate. I love this picture because these little puppies, none of them could carry this stick by themselves because it's too big. The problems we face are too big for any one of us to handle. And that's why we've got to be able to support each other and collaborate. Next slide. I know that we're going to, and I know, Lynette, would you give me an idea of when I know we're going to take a break and let people start asking some questions. So again, I want to just quickly go over some things we talked about. Understand your landscape, utilize data. And you guys, if you can do this geomapping, I tell you, it will absolutely make a huge difference to you as in terms of your work and your effort, how much you're allocating to what. Use that data to be able to really do geomapping. Collaboratively, again, collaboration. This we're going to talk about later on about your grant funding. I want you all to really think about how you do joint funding with people, and that some of your grant funding should be used as added value. And what we have done at WestCare and at WestCare Texas is we have brought in dollars with the sole purpose of what we're doing, what we call capacity building, in which we share funding with our community. I'm so very proud of us because last year we shared over $4.3 million with people in our immediate community in order to help them. Because again, we have to have all boats rise. It does us no good to be the only one in our community who's doing well. We got to have everybody doing well in order to address the multifaceted issues that we face. So, and also too, you guys think about as we are doing capacity building, when you all decide to do get mental health first aid, or to be able to really talk about capacity building training, let the other partners that you work with, let other nonprofits come in and do the training with you. Have them bring their staff. Everybody can get trained. And we constantly are doing cross training because there's something that they can bring to the table and you can bring to the table. We have a training, it's called Walk a Mile in My Shoes. We did this with the police department. Listen, you need to live I want you to live over here understanding that you can't get out of your car without somebody possibly mugging you when you're coming from the grocery stores. So you'll understand why people doing what they're doing. I want you to live on a street when we don't have any street lights, and see what it's like at nighttime. And we would take how far can you see down the street? There's no street lights. How far can you see down? You could see pieces where the people had porch lights. So what we did is we did a porch light campaign, our neighborhood networkers who are a part of our coalition, and we literally passed out lots of porch lights so we could light up the night. And the crime rates and the drug dealing rates and on those streets dropped. So again, that was what we call a place-based strategy, when we were literally looking at multi-levels, but we saw that there was a problem with many of the streets in a particular part of town, in the poorer part of town, that did not have street lights. They were redlined out of it. And what we did is we started making sure that every house on there had those bright forever light bulbs, so that people can turn on their porch lights at night. And again, I know Sue Thaw did a wonderful job a couple of weeks ago about policies. And you all, again, policy changes are so very, very important. They are the best example of a collective impact approach. And I want to say this to you all right now, you wonderful hero and shero coalitions. You are not enough to elect anyone yourself, but you are enough to keep anyone from being elected. I was a former elected official, and let me just tell you, that group of organized people is what made the difference in my election. And I don't remember how many people were running against me, but we were running for the seat. But I want you to know, you're not enough to elect anybody, but you are enough to keep someone from being elected. And so therefore, that is your power to be able to help policy change be accomplished. All right, next slide. And I think we're getting ready to take a break. We are.
Yes. Wow.
Miss Netta
Do you
Davis,
want to go over this slide, or you want us to stop for questions?
No, we'll stop for questions.
Okay, well, I'm sure we have lots of questions, and because you provided some great information and structure and ways to go. And I'm going to say, Debbie Jones, if you could take your phone off of mute and ask your question, please.
Can you hear me?
I can, dear heart. I can hear you fine.
Thank you. Yes, really appreciated the passion that you shared, and the hope in all of this. Oftentimes when I hear people, they talk about coalitions, the general public or the decision makers tend to think that that's a temporary group.
Mm-hmm.
How do we get, or do you have any ideas of how, like, cities, counties, schools can start investing, looking at it as, promotion and prevention as a general fund investment, as opposed to the current where we are, where it seems like the crisis gets thrown in this triage model, and prevention work, promotion, the risk and protective factors that you've done such a good job sharing with us. The money's all gone. Everything is crisis driven, and we would never, speaking to the choir, as you shared, we'd never ask a cancer patient to say, hey, don't come see me till you're at stage 4.
Right.
In what we're dealing with now, it's, we're waiting funding will go to treatment, recovery, relapse prevention. How do we get them to see that the protective factors are worth investing in, have that be general fund instead of always having to do grants, or hope that a alcohol tax gets increased, which seems to be, again, we don't want to promote substance use, drinking to try and get funded. So just, if you have any thoughts on that general
I
fund
do.
and how to tell people invest instead of always just treat.
And Gerhard, one of the things that I will tell you, and that's what the second part of this is really all about, having all those different resources. One of the things, and this is really interesting, but this is sort of how our world works. People always want to give you money when you don't need it. I mean, and I say that because I've been doing this for so many years, and one of the things is that you all, Debbie, let me just ask this question. If I was your mayor and I came to you and I said, Debbie, we've got some, we just got some community problems. What is it that we can do with you? I mean, how do you help with that? I want to know, what would you tell me?
Well, we've been in that situation, and when they have like some of those communities and our problems, and I said, well, we would love to initially go ahead and do a community readiness practice to get out there and find out the readiness of the community, and then help you strategize, how you can take on these issues, but also make sure that within that strategy, you have that foundations built so that we're not continuing to feed into the problem, that we're not just stopping behaviors, we're actually changing them. And we'd like you to think bigger instead of just right here in the moment.
You're absolutely right. And Debbie, that's what you just said is very key. And I want you to think, one of the key things is that is what you have to promote overall. Because right now, what you're telling me is they see you all as a coalition that's right now going to be around as long as there's DFC funding or something to that effect. And that's what we have to change. And that's what we have worked on over the years to exactly change. Yes, we work on substance prevention, but that is just one of the things that we work on. There is no way with $125,000. And even though people talk about the match with it, there is no way with $125,000 for you to be able to address like these things. In fact, I'm not even sure how that covers a person, administrator, and the overhead. And that is why it's so important for us to be able to make sure that we are connecting things. And if people honestly continue to think, well, you have the match, all of us know that the match is not money in your bank. It is support to help you get something done, but it is not money in the bank, and you cannot bank on that. I do think it's very important, Debbie, that when you're talking to them, that what you're talking about, because what you describe is being able to be a capacity builder that's not only going to be there just for the moment, but it's going to be there for other things they need. Because when they come to you, they are coming to you with a specific problem, but the way you respond to that is what's going to help them determine to come back to you when there's another problem. And that's one of the things I want what I'm trying to get across to everyone. You have to be bigger than a single issue. If you're really doing prevention, then you really are focusing in on a number of issues in your community, not just substance use. You are focusing in on root cause issues of what that substance use is. And one of the key things that I would suggest to you, Debbie, have you ever been funded by one of your area foundations?
Oh.
Okay.
Beverly, we have another question, but go ahead.
Okay.
We have not reached out to them within the last 10 years. So I'm hearing that that's a suggestion that you're encouraging me.
Yes.
To do. Awesome.
I am looking, you guys. We have immediately, I'm getting ready. Once we get past, once we come out of this, we're going into the whole second part of this. And this is when your questions are really going to be answered, because this is where I want you to really think differently. And here, and I have funding sources listed around that are going to help you do that.
Thank you.
And I am not sharing with you all any funding source that I have not been able to get myself.
Great, and thank you so much. And we have one more question with Carol Mastrani before we go to the second half of our presentation.
Okay.
Carol?
Yes, hello. It sounds like my question is going to be asked in the second part because it is about other funding sources.
Yes.
So perfect. Thank you so much.
Right. I was telling Miss Lynette Perry Young earlier, I said, I want you all to know we can go through this to set the framework, but everybody's going to want the second part.
Great. So you can actually give us the second part. We're ready.
Okay,
We're
let's
sitting
go.
on the edge of our seats.
All right, good. You guys, please feel free to get some water and stuff. And now let's hit it. Okay, now we're going to talk about organizational capacity, because this is about building yourself for the long haul. So being able to make sure that you can build both your capacity of your organization, of your infrastructure, of your program, and your finances. So very, very quickly, we're gonna talk about overhead, indirect rates. We're going to talk about leveraging resources, and we're going to talk about building equity. You all, and very, very key, I want you all to know, this is really about as you grow, the things that you need to be able to do for the long haul. Next slide. Okay, this is very, very, very important to all of you all. And I know that some of you all will have grants that they just said, oh, we'll just give you 10% indirect, and that's what you take. I want you all to know that your indirect rate is a strategic long-term solution. And I don't care if you just have a DFC grant, this is something that you absolutely must think about needing. The reason I'm telling you all this is because without an indirect rate, you are leaving lots of money on the table, or no, you're leaving lots of money that's going to go out of your hands that you'll never recoup. There are costs for you all in your leadership, for the management, for your human resources, for your IT. There are costs if you're in a building for your depreciation of property. None of that is captured in a 10% from 10% of whatever your award is. The reason you have that is that's really to cover your overhead. If you're wondering why at the end of the year, you don't have enough to do certain things, it's because you're paying for utilities. You're paying for all those hidden costs for what it costs you to advertise and get people in. You're paying for the same thing of what it costs, if you're in an older building like we are, of what it costs to put those IT staffing things up in the wall so that you can get internet. You're paying for a lot of things, you know, that you are not getting back. And so I just want you all to know that it's important for you all to please make sure that you get an indirect rate. Because the other thing is as your city and county and state and other people fund you, your indirect rate is going to be recognized. And so by them. And so that indirect rate that's what you get. That is your money. You use that. That allows you to be able to build your capacity to expand and to purchase capital assets. Money from that direct rate that you store up over the years is what you will be using to do that. Next slide. I wanted to be able to make sure you guys, you're going to have these slides, but do know that these are going to be documents that you need to get together to be able to submit for your indirect rate. In many cases, I don't know if it's going to be CDC. It's what's called your cognizant agency. If those of you out there are only funded by CDC, that's who it will be. But you can also try to take a look at your cognizant agency, meaning the agency that grants you the indirect rate is U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. Take a look at that. I don't think that is something that ONDCP does, but I do know that the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services does that. Okay, next slide. Now let's get into this. So now we want to talk about building resources. So these are things that you guys mostly have already been doing. So I want to be able to really move all the way down. You got for y'all to really don't forget to think about your area foundations, your private funding, which is your United Ways, and also organizations that I talk about on the next slide, such as your restaurants, such as Chick-fil-A, grocery mega stores such as Walmart, all of those, Home Depot, every year we have gotten funding from Home Depot, and it has been wonderful. Sometimes they have come out and actually built something for us, or they actually give you money to do a capital project. So one of the things I talked about, this is how you start leveraging your money for resources, having people come together to do joint training, joint grant submissions, and believe it or not, the joint fundraisers, because doing joint fundraisers, sometimes when you do it all by yourself, you spend so much money on the space and the dinner that you really don't make all that much money in terms of what you're trying to raise. So think about doing joint fundraisers. Also, nonprofit entrepreneurship. Goodwill is the best agency. Goodwill and Habitat for Humanity have done a wonderful job of being able to take a charitable purpose and turn that into an entrepreneurial enterprise, which has kept them afloat. And organizational consulting, I know I can tell so many of you all would be so great for me to be contracted out in the crime prevention field, in HIV, and community problem solving, and how to put together coalitions that can be used by some of the other grants, so that you may want to consider doing some organizational consulting. Next slide. All right, so now I want to talk about where we're at. You all, first and foremost, I want you all to know y'all heard of ARPA, the America Rescue Plan Act funds. I want you all to know that these funds are still out there, and most of your counties and cities have not spent it. I want to tell you all today, in November of 2023, today, our county just got around to being able to close the grant announcement for ARPA funds. It's taken 2 years, and many, and I know this from the U.S. Conference of Mayors conversation, and from the National County Officials Organization. People still have lots of their ARPA funds sitting in their communities. So you all, I want you to check with your mayors and check with your county judge to find out where it is and what they're going to be doing with it, and push them to be able to do this. And the nice thing about the ARPA funds, you can use them for anything. Part of the $23 million we got to change this campus came from the ARPA funds. And so we have other funds that are also part of us setting up the residential the apartments for women, actually helping us change over our building structure, actually funding the coalition work. That has also come from ARPA funds. So please know that these funds are still out there, and that they have not been spent up. Y'all know about SAMHSA, but I do also want you all to know, when I talked about recast, I bet you 10 to 1, most of you all did not even know about that. Recast it talked about being able to resolve trauma, the trauma that a community has experienced. And it was all based on building a community coalition that was a problem-solving coalition to do it. These grants were $1 million a year. And I'm pleased to say that because of our coalition, we were awarded that. When they first came out, this was only given to for-profit to public entities. So we actually wrote the grant for our county. They submitted it, and we are the implementing partner, and they're the grantee who received it. But it's $1 million a year, and it's a 5-year grant. And it was all because of us having the coalition. I want to be able to bring your attention to something. This is the workforce development for community health workers. In the Department of Labor, they have hello? Did someone say something? Okay. In the Department of Labor, one of the things that we've talked about community health workers, please know that there is a certification for community health workers, but a lot of what you all are already doing, when I talked about being federal messengers, you all are already doing that. It will not take much for you to host a training that gets your people certified so that you are community health workers, because there are grants that specifically fund your staff for that. Now again, we're thinking broader. So you will be able to get a grant that actually funds your staff. and for you to have additional staff for the overall work that you do. Community health workers do a number of things. Not only are they credible messengers, but they do a lot of things that that we as coalition leaders and coalition people do. You've got apprenticeships with youth and family workforce training. Again, thinking of those young people. We had and this is what we'll be using this upcoming year in the Department of Labor. We have a youth development, we call it the summer extravaganza. We work with youth for 9 weeks, 8 to 5, to be able to keep them out of trouble. And doing that, during that time, they're learning life skills. They're learning all kinds of risk avoidance, peer pressure resistance, all of these kinds of things that they learn from 9 weeks. But again, by the young people who help us with that are called our junior counselors. It is an apprenticeship of sorts. And this is the kind of funding that you can get for that. Same with Youth Build. And for those of you all who are working on, literally people reentering, it has meant usually people coming back from the criminal justice system, most of whom had drug involved charges. But this reentry has also worked for people coming back in terms of recovery. So I just want you all to know this. The Department of Justice has been one of our best friends. If all the stuff in terms of preventing substance use has absolutely impacted all of these topic areas that are here now. And we just received your U.S. Department, and I want you all to know this, your U.S. Attorney's Office, each one of you all has a U.S. Attorney. Their office is in charge of what is called Project Safe Neighborhood. Project Safe Neighborhood is a grant that oftentimes will run through your governor's office or run through your U.S. Attorney's Office. But it is about creating safe neighborhoods, and it is all related to preventing drug use. So I want you all to know that through the Project Safe Neighborhoods, we've been selected by what's called the Better Block Initiative, and they're coming in to actually build out a communal space for our community, a place that's got shading and barbecue pits and everything else for the community to come together. And that's because they are part of the Justice Department's Project Safe Neighborhoods, and they're coming into our neighborhood to do that. So, but I do want you all to know that probably every year we receive a justice grant. Most of their grants are between $350,000 to $400,000, and usually they're at least 3 years. Some of them are 5 years. Most of them are 3, but usually we are able to get a grant for close to $1 million every year doing something with the Department of Justice. And I want you all to realize that look at what these topics are: crime, violence, gang prevention, community policing. How many of those things are not already related to what you're already dealing with? They are. The Administration for Children and Families, promoting safe and stable families. If that's not something that we do in prevention, I don't know what is. And so they are also very, very big on preventing child abuse. So to address those children who've had parents who have been addicted is very high on their list. Next slide. So CDC. Now CDC, I know many of you think it can feel like you're writing a research grant, but I do want you to know that CDC funds well. But they do fund many of the other topics that are related to us in terms of both. They now fund the Drug-Free Communities program. It comes from CDC. But don't forget about HIV prevention, which is a direct result of substance use, and violence, direct result, a co-risk factor, and injuries. All of that is in the play. HRSA, I love HRSA because one of the things that they do is they believe in funding the behavioral health workforce, and we're going to be submitting a program to them to actually, in fact, Janetta, I want to be able to, hopefully the CACA will work with us to be able to do this across the country, but we are a workforce that is deserving to be supported. And I do believe that we should be able to work with HRSA to really address the behavioral health workforce of many of the people, and to be able to do lots of mini grants across the country for education and training of the prevention field. They're very, very big on maternal health. You all, this is the next one. The HUD Ross program is one of my favorite. It's Residents' Opportunity to Self-Sufficiency. With this money, we built community coalitions inside each public housing complex. So I remember at one time finding back, we had like 10 community coalitions that were funded by the HUD Ross program that were in public housing. Each public housing site had their own community coalition with the people living in those public housing, and it was very, very successful as people engaged. And that's really when we got so much of our stuff, so many things passed and so many things done. The National Institutes of Health, I will tell you all, this is one where you really have to partner with researchers, but there are things that can be done with researchers that really will benefit your community. I just want you to know that there are some, CACA is doing some projects now where they're looking at doing a project that's looking at outcomes and how coalitions get outcomes. That is a project that can be funded by NIH to actually help many more coalitions begin to do some of this. This next one, you all, I bolded it because I want you all to know that AmeriCorps has been one of our saving graces, and I've been doing AmeriCorps for 30-something years. It has actually provided us with the kind of manpower we need in the community to get things done. Most people, and I want you all to know, AmeriCorps, the grant itself is a complex grant. But what you all need to know is that you have people who are national, they're nationally funded as AmeriCorps members. And what you can do is you can be a subcontractor or sub-award recipient of them. In San Antonio, Public Allies is a national recipient of AmeriCorps funds. So we didn't want to have to go after the national grant, but what we do is we partner with them, and we're a sub-recipient, and we actually get AmeriCorps members from them. I've never gotten less than 12 members a year from them. And so again, those Public Allies help us get so much work done. Oh my gosh, because your Public Allies are with you full time for 10 months. And those who still have hours to do, so oftentimes for some it stretches out to a whole year, but it works because now the cost for a first year is now $19,500. For a second year student, I believe it's $22,000, and for a third year student, it's $24,000. When you all think of how you use your budget, you have $125,000. Often, many of you are lucky to pay a director and possibly an administrative person. With AmeriCorps, you actually have, it makes for being able to have another Public Ally work with you. And actually, when you're really looking for other funding, because the amount for them to work with you for the year is so low, you actually can get lots of people to fund the Home Depot, Walmart. All of them will actually fund an AmeriCorps member for you for the year. But those people, there are other organizations called City Year, Vista, Senior Corps. All of them are national people who are funded by AmeriCorps in which you can actually work with them to be able to have AmeriCorps members. Don't forget your area and national foundations. You are already doing what is now the buzz of the year for them, and that's setting up communities of solution. And that's all through a coalition, which you guys are doing. Don't forget your United Ways. United Way is beginning to now look at communities of solution and community people coming together in coalitions to do work. The chain stores, Walmart, CVS, Home Depot, Chick-fil-A is another really good one, and so is McDonald's. McDonald's is also really very good for our summer youth program. McDonald's actually has given us, times they'll give us breakfast for 177 kids or 200 something kids, or lunch or whatever. So don't forget that McDonald's is there. So and don't forget your city, county, and state funding. Please know that most of your states, for those of you who don't know, most of your states will have a coalition grant, and it's usually twice what you're already getting for your drug-free communities. So your state is using community block grant funds to also fund coalitions. So please consider making sure that you go after that money as well. Next slide. Now I want to be able to talk about what we call asset building. You all, this is where you're really beginning to get into really making sure that you can that we can begin to, that this is for the long haul. You all this exists in all of your communities. I want all of you all to know that. Community development block grants. These are grants that are provided on an annual basis, but these are monies that you can get from your city, from the city and your county, to be able to buy a building or rehab a building. Now, what's really important about this is that with the assets, your city also has surplus funding and surplus buildings. So you may be able to get your city to give you a building, and then you use community block grants to fix it up, and it becomes your property. Other times, like for us at Ella Austin, we have a big, huge campus, and we're charged $10 a year for the entire campus. So I want you all to know both the community development block grant funds and your Community Reinvestment Act funds. These are the Community Reinvestment Act funds. Excuse me, are funds from your banking institutions. Your banking institution by law must actually provide funding in communities where they're chartered and where you have moderate to low income neighborhoods. And it's the whole purpose of it is to address the negative impacts of years of redlining. Your tax increment refinancing zone. You guys, your cities and counties are going to be mad at me for telling you about this, but they have the ability to do this. What it is this is where your city and county will take money. It's usually your city will take money if you're in a high risk area, and all of you have them. They take the tax monies from that area and they set it aside for future growth. Oftentimes it's been being set aside for years and no growth has happened. This funding can be used for anything. I just want you all to know that. 9 million, as I said, we got $9 million from this a year ago. Asset forfeiture funding. I want you all to know that the asset forfeiture funding has been around for a long time. These are the assets. What this is your university, your U.S. Attorney's Office and your police department, your sheriff department. When they seize assets from drug dealers, they're able to keep these assets and they can either sell them or turn them into cash. But then the money that comes from that, up to 15% of it can be annually can be used to fund crime prevention and drug prevention efforts. We have been the recipient for the first time 2 years ago. Our police department in its history, the first time, actually, we were the first people to ever receive asset forfeiture funding from our police department. Next slide quickly, please. Okay, once you all work with your city to take your city and your school district to take a look at repurposing publicly owned buildings, and to really think to think about as you're going forward. This is a function that I would hope the coalitions take on because it's needed everywhere throughout the country. This is taking a look at one-stop servicing for one-stop servicing for referral services. Many of you all will have faced the same things we faced, and that is every time you refer somebody to somewhere, by the time they get there, the service is no longer there. They've run out of whatever. So with this, being able to be a centralized place where somebody is keeping up with what resources are available now, so that you don't send somebody over to get help and when they get there, there's nothing there. Again, because through your surplus school, city and county buildings, you can turn these into resource centers, education and service center, coalition building. I can't wait for our campus to be finished, because it will be a coalition campus. Partnerships and mergers are another thing to look at. If you are struggling, you may want to partner or merge with others and be that prevention component of what it is that they do. And again, I mentioned earlier, as you can certainly look at nonprofit opportunities like Goodwill and Habitat for Humanity. Next slide. I think that's it. So interconnect. This is all about, if you went to Sue's, if you haven't seen Sue's presentation, please get it. This is really all about being the tipping point. You all, no matter what you do have to make sure that you are doing things that you're using your advocacy to be the tipping point to change systems and policies that will work for you so that you can collectively build equitable, safe, and healthy communities where everyone participates and prospers. And I think the next slide, I just want to tell you all a story real quick. Never give in. Never give in. Never, never, never. No only means no for the moment. You don't take no for an answer. You keep going back until you get yes. And the motto that I've always lived by, it's going to be all right in the end. And if it's not all right, ladies and gentlemen, it's not the end. So I want to thank each and every one of you all for all your time and attention.
Wow, what a wonderful, wonderful presentation. That was outstanding. And we have just time for just one quick question from Brenda Autry. I think it was Brenda. Did we get to your question, Brenda?
Did we get to it?
Sorry.
Hello. Hi.
Yes. Hi, Brenda.
Like I said earlier, I don't know whether this is a question or just a plea to get on someone's sofa. But anyway, we just seem to be on our own island. We have a membership with our coalition, but some of the people seem to work on their own island, and it is hard. It's like, I think of like when you pruning your shrubberies. If you prune them at the wrong time of the year, then you lose them, and it's you can't, it's hard to get them back. So I guess my question is, how I really don't know what my question is.
Well, Brenda, thank you for your comment, and I'm gonna have Ms. Beverly respond to that and close us out with never give in, never give in, never, never, never.
Thank you.
Brenda, I do want to just say thank you for all the work that you're doing. But one of the things that you bring up is people not really I understand it feels like sometimes everybody's kind of out for themselves. But that changes once you have a true success. And honestly, Brenda, a lot of that is leadership.
Okay.
I mean, your leader has got to be one that emulates that even though somebody decides to not play ball well, they still play well with them in the sandbox, because over time that will change. And Brenda, one of the things I'm hoping that CADCA will do, so we can say this to Miss Davis, and that is that at CADCA, I'm hoping that we will actually have a session where people can literally, it's just a rap session, literally a problem solving session, where people can come in and really talk about their issues, and through collective wisdom of a lot of the coalitions and stuff in the room, we can put one up and we can resolve it or talk about it as coalitions out there doing the work. I'm hoping so, because I hear this every time. I wish we had this time to do that, but we'll look at doing a collective think, and we'll figure out how we can maybe do that at CAC. We'll let Miss Davis Joyce figure that out for us. But what you're saying is very helpful, because these are things that are real, and we want to be able to address them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Someone asked Janetta if they can submit questions after the presentation closes.
Oh, yes, they can. Yes, they
Okay.
can. Well, we have enjoyed this presentation so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We look forward to hearing from you again in the future. And we just can't thank you enough in being able to be with us here today. And we appreciate it so much, Beverly. And please stay in touch. We have lots of ways that we can enhance our work with your presentation. So thank you so much. And we will actually be posting this on our website. So stay tuned for more to come, guys. Thank you again, and have a great weekend. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.